Welcome to Lead the Way with Anna Gauker. Your guide, Anna Gauker, is on a quest of her own to find effective ways of creating change and inclusion in our communities. You have come to the right place if you believe in truth, justice, and coffee. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, this is Lead the Way, and I'm Anna Gauker. Just a reminder, we can be found on a variety of platforms, including Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn, and Apple Podcasts. After you listen, rate, review, and subscribe to help spread the word about Lead the Way. Connecting through art is essential now more than almost any other time. Our guest in this episode is Jonathon Solari, the CEO of Madison Ballet. Jonathon is leading an organization that's doing everything possible to serve the needs of our community with what they do best, creating beauty in life through performance. I first met Jonathon a couple of years ago through the New Leaders Council Fellowship Program, which we completed in the summer of 2018. It was great to catch up, and I hope you get a lot out of his thoughtful approach to leadership. Well, Jonathon, thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I was reading a bit, doing some research. Can you tell me a bit about your background? Where are you from originally?
So I was born in San Francisco and left there when I was very young. And throughout my childhood, I grew up all over the country, moving around quite a bit. I landed in New York for undergrad. I went to NYU there and called New York home for about 10 years. Went off to graduate school in Boston at Boston University, where I met my wife, who's from Whitewater, Wisconsin, and she recruited me here home. So I've been in Madison about 4 years, or Wisconsin. I've been, in Whitewater and Madison, and now in Stoughton, and I love it. It's home, truly.
You were in New York. What was your major in college, and what motivated you to choose it?
I was a theater major. So I was a theater director and producer, and had worked in that world my whole life until moving to Wisconsin. So I went to NYU and studied at Playwrights Horizons Theater School there, and got to learn acting and directing and producing, stage management, all the design elements, just everything that goes into putting on a production. And was very fortunate during my undergraduate experience to be able to work professionally on Broadway as an assistant director to some of the great directors of the art form, and travel around the country directing plays and operas. It was a crash course, truly. And the things that I learned there are applied in many different ways, but almost on a daily basis in the new role.
What drew you into theater?
I always, since my earliest memories in kindergarten, was performing in school productions, and loved it and found community in it. And over the many moves that I had just mentioned, it was a place to call home no matter where I landed. And that was something that was really important to me. And I learned early on in high school that the right production and the right moment can organize a community and create change for that community. So it's a powerful art form. I consider all the performing arts kind of similar in that regard. And I'm happy to have returned to it with Madison Ballet now.
What was your favorite experience as an assistant director? Just observing people or interacting with people that you can remember?
So Bart Shear is an incredible world-renowned director. He is the resident director. Last I checked, he was the resident director at Lincoln Center Theater. A lot of the shows, the touring productions from Lincoln Center that travel to the Overture Center are directed by Bart. And he invited me to work on a world premiere in Seattle at the Intiman Theater, where he was artistic director at the time. And then we took that production to the Long Wharf Theater in New Haven, Connecticut. And because it was a new play and we had the good fortune of having the playwright in the room, Bart was able to see how different cities responded to the piece and make suggestions with real grace and integrity, and molded the play, this, now published work that will live on forever. He got the best version of it by listening to the audience and getting to know those different cities and figuring out what would work and what was universally true between the two places. And I think about his thoughtfulness, and more often than not, he was successful in taking notes and knowing when to give them, waiting a few weeks, being patient. I learned that from Bart.
Oh. And how is he able to translate, you think, what he was observing into effective direction?
I think it's true of any good director or any good leader, knowing who your team is and what motivates them and uniting them around a shared vision. That's true of any good leader, I believe. It's true of Bart. It was true of the other directors I worked with. It's something that I aspire to.
Give me some dirt. What did you hate?
Well, there are a number of things that need to be improved, right? I mean, the arts in this country are not invested in. They're not as well respected as they need to be, as they should be. I think that's particularly true in this state, unfortunately. I know there's a lot of good work and advocacy to try to reallocate and explain the inherent value of the art and also the economic value of art, but we're last in the nation for state investment in the arts generally. And when we think about where our nation sits nationally, that's a sad double whammy.
Are there any statistics that show ranking for private donations? I'm just curious.
I'm sure there are. I don't know them. Places that are that we think of as cultural hubs that have larger populations likely have more donations, private donations. But I've been really moved by what I've seen from our support of our community just in my less than a year now as CEO of Madison Ballet. It's been really inspiring to see people make up for the loss of where the state would be, where we'd like to see the state be.
If we back up to after you graduated from undergrad. What were your goals at that point?
It was always to try to find the right story for the right community to make a change. And what I love about the arts and what I loved about being a freelance director and producer was that you could invest wholeheartedly in something for 3 months and walk away and take on a new challenge. That there was always something waiting for you on the horizon once you were successful in what was immediately in front of you. So you would step into a production. Right after undergrad, I was invited to meet with the Belarus Free Theater, which was a group that I deeply admire still, who are performing illegally in the abandoned houses of Minsk and Belarus, where essentially they're living under a dictatorship. They don't have the right to assemble or freedom of speech. Many of their colleagues and actors and fellow performers have had to leave the country or have gone missing. I was invited to meet with them to see a production of theirs and then travel to Minsk to perform with them and to write and direct a short play to share with their audience. And in thinking about the necessity to tell a story, the necessity to bring people together to experience art, that was something I was always chasing. It was like a high going after. So when I had that experience, it transformed the way that I wanted to present work. And everything after that, I wanted to find a way to bring community together with that kind of imperative.
Is New Brooklyn Theater separate from what you've talked about before, your experience in New York?
Yeah, New Brooklyn Theater is something that I founded shortly after coming back from Belarus. Maybe a few years afterwards, I had gotten tired of looking for performance spaces. It's one of the greatest expenses to any performing arts organization is the rent that you pay to a performing arts center or a theater. And there was a historic building that used to be a civil rights hub in Bed-Stuy, which is a historically underserviced area of Brooklyn. And I incorporated this theater company to try to save that theater that had fallen into disrepair and was unfortunately unsuccessful in that effort, but used my newfound 501c3 status and my company that I had built to do site-specific plays that were all politically motivated, for lack of a better term.
So you made it a nonprofit.
That's right.
What
Yeah, that was my second.
Think to do that?
It was many of the lessons that I learned from the mentors that I had before. You know, Bart Shear, who I mentioned earlier, was the artistic director of a nonprofit theater company in Seattle and was a resident at Lincoln Center, which is a nonprofit as well. It is the way that most arts organizations in this country are founded. And I had vision of New Brooklyn Theater being one of the staples, one of the cornerstones of the Brooklyn arts community. So that was the step we had to take.
That makes total sense. I just never would have thought about it. Really, do you think it's more challenging in the beginning if you approach it as a nonprofit and then it kind of is more sustainable later? Or what do you think the different approach is?
Well, just because you're a nonprofit organization doesn't mean that you can't be profitable.
Right.
You know, in the arts, to my point earlier, we're fulfilling a need, an educational need, a cultural need that is not as invested by our government as it could be. And that is really in my understanding, the essence of a nonprofit is we
Right.
are allowed to um, have tax exempt status in order to fill a need that otherwise would be a responsibility of the government. And we're an educational organization. And at this point, when I say we are, I'm speaking about Madison Ballet, of course. But that was true of New Brooklyn Theater. It's true of many of the major arts organizations. They're doing all sorts of programming to educate outside of what you see on the stage.
Exactly. And you
Mm-hmm.
said that your wife is from Wisconsin, and the reason you relocated here. What was your initial reaction to moving here?
You know, it was a strange time. My wife had just graduated from grad school. Her name's Courtney Nelson. She's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she was my set designer for a number of our site specific shows. So we had just gone through this whirlwind of productions that had been produced by New Brooklyn Theater, where we traveled to Istanbul at the request of Harvard University to do a production of The Cherry Orchard. And that was immediately following a production of an old Henrik Ibsen play, An Enemy of the People, that we performed in West Virginia in response to a water crisis there. So we had kind of traveled around the world really quickly, and Courtney had just graduated. I still had a semester of teaching left, and her father was diagnosed with lung cancer. So we came back here for the last stage of his life and to be near family. And the community that I found here, the incredible friends that I've made, the welcoming nature of this place was almost immediate. There were difficult circumstances certainly that brought us here, but I wouldn't have changed any of it. I'm very happily home.
What's different about Wisconsin than anywhere else that you've lived?
It's difficult to say because I feel like there's so much different about me here. I feel like I've been able to slow down a little bit and
Are we
find.
transforming you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
Well,
It's
you're
hard to say.
welcome.
It's been a good transformation, so thank you. Yeah. Hopefully I have the opposite effect a little bit too. Hopefully I'm transforming Wisconsin a little bit here and there.
Right. Exactly. You're making your impact for sure.
It's a good relationship.
I read that you're now the first CEO of Madison Ballet.
That's
What
right.
were the challenges to the job going in?
Well, Madison Ballet has been around for 38 years and is the premier dance organization in the county. It's the second biggest dance organization in the state. There was a lot to live up to in all of that history. At the same time, the organization was at a turning point. They had just lost their longtime artistic director who had led the company for about 19 years. And they had just moved into a new space. So we had been in Westgate Mall for a long time. We know now that Westgate is about to be redeveloped and is vacant at the moment. So that was a really intelligent move on behalf of the board of directors. And we, a month before my first day, opened up a beautiful new space on Odana Road on the west side. So there were a lot of things that were all moving at once. And frankly, the organization had experienced real financial trouble in the years leading up to my hiring. So that information's not hidden anywhere. They had to get canceled a season in 2016 and had to let their dancers go. And they've been in a rebuilding process. And I'm really proud to have been able to step in as the corner had been turned and lead the organization into the future.
So you mentioned that there were several things happening all at once. You took the job, you knew that you would need to kind of create a focus for everyone and a direction and execute effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Then COVID-19 happened, shook us all up. How has that impacted the direction?
It's changed everything. I think that's true of every business, of every nonprofit, every organization, every individual life. It's dramatically altered everything. And for us, we were on the verge of opening A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's a beautiful ballet that we were going to have as our kind of triumphant return to Overture's Capitol Theater. And we had to make the call for the health and safety of our community and for the dancers involved to cancel rehearsals, a month out before opening. At the same time, we had to close our school. We have a really vibrant and incredible curriculum in our School of Madison Ballet that teaches 150 to 200 people, children and adults, the art form every year. We've had to close those doors, and it cut off basically all sources of income for us, besides the generosity of our donors and the foundations and the corporations who are standing with us. So it's entirely changed our business model temporarily. At the same time, we're cautiously optimistic that this storm will pass in time, and we're taking every action available to us to make sure that we weather it. But it's been hard.
Yeah. What opportunities have been presented by our current circumstances?
Well, it's difficult to say because I don't think that we've emerged from them yet. I am hopeful that generally people will recognize the value that arts bring to them, and the importance of gathering to hear a story, to experience something inspiring together. But we will wait and see on the other side of this if that is true. I have that impression now. I think that there's innovation that's happening in the arts, that we're seeing the kind of incredible human spirit emerge in people finding ways to connect. I mean, you and I looking at each other on screens right now, it's taken us too long to reconnect, but we're doing it now in these circumstances. I think that there's a lot of exchange of art and ideas that are happening that way. But for dance, we are inherently a physical experience, something to be seen in person, something to do in person, among others. So we have risen to the occasion and recorded classes for our students for them to continue their training for free in these circumstances. But it's not the same as being in the room with your instructor or being in the room with a cast of 100 people performing the Nutcracker. We're pivoting in order that we may return.
Right. So you do have classes going on online right now?
That's right. Yeah, they're not live classes. We've had to temporarily reduce our staff, but we pre-recorded a bunch and we're sending them out over the course of the summer so that kids can still continue their training during this time.
Right. And I'm sure so many parents will appreciate that because I know with summer coming and so much is kind of up in the air and uncertain, we're all kind of wondering what we're going to do with our time. So that will be imperative, I'm sure.
Yes.
The 40th anniversary for Madison Ballet is coming up. What are
That's right.
your goals moving forward?
So we were in the process of hiring our next artistic director, and we had intentions of interviewing them and having them teach classes with our company dancers in the middle of March. So we've had to put that process on hold. Um, and my hope is that those candidates that we were so excited for, we had received applications from around the world and had distilled and found our greatest fits across the country, and one from here as well. Um, my hope is the 40th season will be a platform for that person to present their artistic vision and for us to announce the new era of Madison Ballet, that we can look back and celebrate those 40 years and plan for the next 60 together. That's my hope. I'm also really proud of the strides we've made with our outreach programming. We've been really intentional in partnering with nonprofit organizations around the county to figure out how we can use dance to help best achieve their missions. So we've been working with the YWCA in a restorative justice program through dance. An incredible dancer and choreographer and instructor named Darwin Black has built a curriculum for kids going through that program for them to express themselves positively physically. I'm very proud of that program, and I'm eager to get back to it. We have 30 different partners around the community, in the last year that have come on board who are using dance to organize their community in their library or their community center. And our dancers, our instructors are thrilled by it. And it's something that I think is going to be an important pillar for this organization moving forward.
How did that collaboration come together with YWCA? That is so cool.
I've admired the YWCA of Madison since moving here. I've attended the Circle of Women events and have really been just so impressed with their leadership, and it seemed like a no-brainer if they would be willing to partner with us, and they were thrilled by the idea. So it was like anything else. You pick up the phone, you write an email, and you send out your crazy idea and hope it works.
Yeah, I know that. I know that feeling.
I know you do.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for this conversation. I know that this is a very challenging time, and I appreciate you taking this opportunity. And I'm really excited to see what you do with Madison Ballet. This is going to be
Thank
awesome.
you so much. I really appreciate it, and I'm honored to have been invited. So thank you for a bright spot in a challenging time.
Thanks again to Jonathon Solari. To learn more about classes and other ways to support Madison Ballet, visit madisonballet.org. And keep up with all episode content for Lead the Way by liking our page on Facebook at Lead the Way Podcast. This episode was brought to you by the time and talent of Buzz Kemper and Tyler Willenbrink. I'm Anna Gauker. Until next time.